Hi, this is Scott, Kilo Sierra 6 Delta Alpha Yankee, and for today's video I wanted to talk about a kind of severely negative experience I had with the world of radio, and it's largely responsible for the reason I've kind of taken a hiatus from a lot of things related to radio. It just, this one really got under my craw, and I've had difficulty. I've tried to do this video over the past 3 months probably 20 times. And because it upset me so much, the video tends to spiral out of control. I think I might be able to maintain it today. I'm going to hit just the high points. I'm not going to get into too deep into who did what or name names or anything like that. But let me give you the basic outline of what happened a couple of months ago. So I had a net that I had established a couple of years ago, a GMRS net, and it was on the Tulare County Amateur Radio Club GMRS repeater. And this net grew into something kind of special. Over the span of 2 years, we were getting 35, 40 check-ins every single time we ran the net every Monday evening at 7:30. We were getting check-ins from, Tulare County is right in the center of California. We were getting check-ins all the way down to Bakersfield, all the way north to Modesto and Turlock and lower Stockton even. That's the reach and range of the repeater. So we had managed as a group to connect all of these GMRS radio operators together in a weekly net. And not only was it an activity that people looked forward to, it was something that could have been a valuable tool in the event of the reason a net exists for emergency communications. Unfortunately, someone took it upon themselves to decide that the net no longer needed to exist. And what they started doing, we had a problem one night. All of a sudden, things started malfunctioning. We were doing check-ins, and we started getting all kinds of interference. And what it appeared to me, what was going on was somebody who was taking they had put a scrambler filter on their radio, and most of the GMRS radios, you have the ability to send a scrambled signal. And they would run this scrambler either whether it's through the repeater or over the receive channel, and I'm thinking it was actually through the repeater. I haven't tested it myself. I may go ahead and do that just to see if it's even possible to do. But long story short, every time we would try to run a net, and the repeater would work perfect throughout the week. It would work perfect throughout the day on Monday. But as soon as we started running that net, the interference would start, and it would carry on for the duration of the net, which would get cut short. I tried this for nearly a month. Every single Monday we would run the net, and every single Monday it would get wrecked. And it became pretty obvious that we were no longer going to be able to do a net. Somebody, like I said, had decided. I'm not going to tell you who it is, but I know who it is. And how I know that, I'll keep to myself, and what I intend to do with that, I'll keep to myself. Now you say, well, Tulare County Amateur Radio Club wants you to go do a fox hunt and all this kind of stuff. And somebody had thrown that out there as a possibility. The problem is this club isn't really, this isn't the kind of club that does that kind of stuff. One, they don't have the skill to be able to carry it out. Two, they don't get beyond the talk phase on a lot of stuff, and this is one of those things. They don't get beyond the talk phase. But three, I was never contacted by the club. I reported it to the club and let them know what was going on with their net. I'm not a member of the club anymore, but I continued running it, not necessarily for the club, but for the group that was participating in the net. Again, they didn't seem all that bothered by it. And to be honest with you, I wouldn't be surprised, because GMRS has kind of it's brought a lot of problems to the club. And in fact, it brought some characters into the orbit of the club that really caused a lot of damage. And I won't really get into that, but some of the parties involved in this are from there. So I don't want to be that guy, that starts. Now I'm gonna leave it right there, because again, I don't necessarily want to reveal, like I say, who it is, and even if we did discover the offending party that was causing the interference, what do you do with that? beyond, do you report it to the FCC, and the FCC is going to swoop in and do an operation? And no, they're not going to do a damn thing about it. The FCC is more concerned about people interfering with public safety systems. As far as amateur radio goes, you might get a sympathetic FCC person that'll come out and do a, scary, stop that kind of thing to the offending party. But beyond that, it would persist forever and ever. There are other ways to handle things, and fortunately, I'm a very skilled individual at doing that kind of stuff. So this will get handled differently, and it'll get handled eventually. How about that? But what's going to happen, like I say, I really don't want to get into that. But it puts a finer point on things, because, again, I've kind of laid out what's going on, but what it really revealed to me was something very important. And that is, if you're relying on repeaters during times of civil strife and uncertainty, which we're currently in what's considered civil strife, not necessarily civil war, but civil strife, and that kind of leads to that if it gets out of control. But as things continue, if you're relying on repeaters for your operational plan from a tactical perspective, and here I'm not talking about recreational radio now. Here I'm talking about the kind of people that use radios for purposes I talk about a lot on this channel, and that is, things like enhanced neighborhood watches, that kind of stuff. If you're relying on repeaters, don't. Number one, and I've laid out some reasons for that, because you're sending your signal to areas that don't need to be sent. You need to keep that stuff tight. When it comes to using radios in the tactical sense, range is actually not the thing you want. You want to be able to send your signal only as far as necessary to get the communication, and hopefully no further than that. So repeaters really aren't a factor, but I note a lot of people using repeaters for stuff like that. And I'm going to say, if your plan relies on that as the backbone of your comm plan, it's going to be a problem for you, because at a time when you may need to use those radios, you may have nefarious, malevolent actors that can come in and shut your repeater down just as quickly as this net got shut down. And it's not hard to do. Interfering and shutting down a net and wreaking havoc upon, a club or an organization's radio activities via a repeater is remarkably easy to do. Not that stable. So I'm going to once again throw out there that if you're not heavily involved in Simplex as part of your comm plan, and if you don't have a Simplex comm plan for relaying communications throughout your area, you need to be working on that, because that's where it's going to be at. If you're using Simplex and you're using a plan for, alternating frequencies at known intervals, that kind of stuff, you can frustrate someone's efforts to jam you or get between you and your signal. Directional antennas, there's a lot of different factors involved with that, and I'll continue talking more about that as time goes by. I am going to be retreading a lot of the same information, but from a different angle, because as I go along, I think of different ways to present information, and it's always good to come back and keep refreshing that stuff, because the fundamentals, whether it's shooting or tactics or anything, the fundamental skills are where it's at. Mastering the fundamental skills gives you the ability to be effective under stress, and continually drilling those fundamental skills in is an important factor. So again, this is just a call out there to let you know that, repeaters are useful from a recreational radio perspective, but when it comes to emergency communications, you're going to need to find some more effective means. And I don't necessarily think that repeater-based emergency communication plans are going to work if you have, again, negative, evil actors out there that want to mess up. And believe me, there are people that'll do that. There are people that in the middle of a disaster will go in and start messing stuff up just through the sheer badness of it. Because what we have to understand is our civilization, our society here in the United States, we have like a collective mental health crisis going on. We have people that have lost the ability, because they spend so much time being keyboard warriors and screwing with people in comment sections and Twitter and all that people have really gotten kind of emboldened, and they're doing more and more stuff just to mess things up, just to, like to borrow the line from, I don't know, I think it was a Batman movie or something. What do they want? They just want to watch it all burn down, because in their own lives, their lives are so meaningless and pointless that the only way they can feel anything is to make other people feel bad. And there's a lot of actors like that out there in the world, and there's a lot of people like that in the radio community. I run into them all the time. 95% of the time, the people that I deal with in radio are good people, honest people, decent people, and people that I like. But man, there's about 5% that are frickin' assholes. And they are hard to deal with. And because they tend to do things that are so negative, they can put you off of the entire thing. I've seen over the span of the last couple of years, people in my immediate orbit in the radio world here in Tulare County just walk away from radio entirely because of the nonsense they've had to deal with. And in our area, we have a couple of particularly bad actors that are largely responsible for that. But there's really not much you can do about them, at least not in the direct sense. How about that? So I've talked long enough about this, but I did want to kind of give an explanation. And there are some people that watch this channel that are involved in that GMRS net. And you have to know that walking away from that net and shutting that thing down was not something I wanted to do. But at the same time, you reach a point to where you have to come to grips with the fact that there's literally nothing you can do to continue the project, because no matter what, it's just going to continue getting messed with. So, and another factor with that is to a large extent, I think the reason that net was being messed with was directly because of me, particularly because the main instigator on this is somebody that, hey, I've done some damage to this guy, and I think this was his way of getting back. So I apologize if that's the case, but if you know what I'm talking about, you know what I'm talking about. And to be quiet is worse, actually, about who this guy is and what he's all about. But okay, I'm sorry, I'm done. I'm going to go ahead and end it at this point, but I will be back with some rosier news, because while I'm not going to be involved in radio at the local level anymore, I'm still going to continue being involved in putting information out to you guys that want to know how to operate your radios during uncertain times. So with that, I'll thank you for watching and or listening. This is Scott, Kilo Sierra 6, Delta Alpha Yankee from Visalia, California. Have a wonderful day.